Digital Banking and Fintech. Survival of the Fittest.
Gentlemen, welcome. Very happy to see you at Sigma IBC. The stage looks amazing. The panel looks amazing. I let Dave Pulis of ZBX Crypto Exchange take over. And good luck. Thank you.
I will stand up for the introduction. Thank you for making it on the first day of Sigma. Very honored to be here moderating a panel with people which I mostly know quite well. Let's not waste time, because time is of the essence, and we introduce ourselves. Just keep it up to 15 seconds.
Sure, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here, and congratulations again for this great work. I'm Giovanni Cunti, the CEO Europe of Gate, one of the biggest crypto exchanges.
I'm Rob Reid, CEO and founder of Everest, one of the first VFA licensees in Malta. We have our own chain and tokenize everything from money to real-world assets.
Good morning. Hi, Miguel Attard. Recently joined Gemini, newly licensed MiCA exchange, having been in the traditional banking space for the past 15 years.
Hi, good morning. This is Richard Mifsud. I'm the founder of XPRIZO, which is a fintech company based in the UAE, and we operate primarily in emerging markets. So we're trying to bring financial inclusion to the financially excluded.
Thank you for that brief introduction. I would like to start the panel by outlining the differences between the traditional banking and what we're doing here, which is basically banking, but also on the digital side of the banking itself. I said it, I think, maybe 5-6 years ago, that traditional banking and the digital side of banking will start to merge more and more. What we're seeing today, it's the regulation coming in, as most of you are very aware. You agree or whether or not with the regulation that's coming in, PSD2 directive that you mentioned, Bob, and many other things. I will let you comment on those, but I know for a fact that Richard has been walking the slums of developing countries to try to obviously bring banking to the unbanked. I've done very good work with Bob as well on processing and also the crypto side. I've worked with Gemini a long time in the past, and Giovanni as well is probably one of our best contenders for our exchange, having obviously an exchange of their own, which they have passed through most of the pains that we have passed through. I would start with Richard, since obviously I know exactly what you guys do. And I want you to comment about the survival of the fittest, here as the article says, and what your experience is working in the developing states, and especially if regulation is coming to fruition, or whether regulation is an imposition towards banking really the unbanked.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting question, because obviously when you're trying to shake things up a little bit, it's always very difficult from all different angles, right? So you have the people which are used to whatever they're used to, it was the bank or if it was cash or whatever. So when you're trying to bring in change, there's a huge element of education, first of all, right? Which I think it's an obligation for all of us trying to bring in this change. I think we have to start from really deep down the grassroots and educate people what the future could look like or potentially should look like we're seeing it, right? So I think one of the main, let's say, issues or problems that we sometimes do is that we don't realize that the general public is not seeing what you are seeing, right? So I think there's a very key element which I've seen over the past 5 years of building my company, right? Where you go and speak to people on the ground, as you said, and they sometimes not even understand what you're trying to say, right? So you're bringing a change which will bring life-changing experiences and facilitation and fastness of things and everything. But we need to do things very, very simple and very clear and educate why we're doing this and how it will change their life, kind of, right? Now, on the side of licensing, obviously, from where we operate, since we operate primarily in emerging markets like Africa and Southeast Asia and so on, the licensing didn't really catch up as yet to what we're used to in Europe. So we're seeing even further behind, right? It's like where we were probably 5-10 years ago, we're still there and we're seeing things coming in. Having said that, the regulation will catch up really quickly, because as it happens in these markets, they will just copy what's happening elsewhere. And that's what some states are already doing, right? So I think it's also an obligation on the regulator side and whoever is helping the regulators to think about the user first and the impact, whatever they're doing, on those users, rather than try to be only police, right? I think we need to keep the people as a person in perspective before everything else. Then everything else should follow, and obviously, eventually also police that we are doing our job right?
Obviously, Richard is speaking from the experience working on grassroots level, Africa, developing countries. I would like to take a different take now about what are the experiences that Gemini is facing when it's going into new markets, the regulation, how it's developing, and obviously being one of the largest entities in general out there, how your experience differs, or maybe it's common to what Richard has mentioned.
Okay, let's start with a little bit of a preamble. I've been with Gemini now for 2 weeks. So there's a very, very steep learning curve, even in understanding what we are doing, how we are doing, but more importantly, why we are doing it. But if we were to take a step back, I think, in contrast to what Richard was mentioning, with the various regulations that apply to us, and primarily MiCA, let's not forget that it's provided clarity to the market, a way forward of how they can approach the market, what they can do in the market, but more importantly, who they can target within the market. So there's a certain level of protectionism within Europe, where ultimately Europe is protecting its own and ensuring that that level of consumer confidence is built and nurtured. I think ultimately an industry can only succeed when you have the retail market buying into it, but more importantly, the institutional really driving the volumes and the business in that respect. Now, we as Gemini, I mean, we've always been an exchange from 10 years ago where regulation has always been the essence of what we do. It was ingrained into me from day one. Ask for permission first before having to ask for forgiveness. So the mindset from the founders to everyone who is operating the day-to-day is, okay, operate in a regulatory environment, operate within a mind space that is governed by a direction. You have your parallel lines, operate in between them. If you're going to start shifting those lines, blurring them, or try to operate outside of them, it's a very serious conversation that has to be had in order to fit yourself within those lines back to who we are and what we're doing. So where we're heading is towards a market where you have 400 million consumers, and even if you tap into 10% of that, you already have a broad, significant customer base. So we've gone to market. We're recently licensed 2 weeks ago and granted our MiCA license as a CASP. We launched last week. Very quiet launch, very slow burner to begin with, not to overwhelm the whole team and the infrastructure as a whole. Numbers are looking good. And as long as we continue that upward trajectory and start building that market confidence in the brand, then I think as an ecosystem altogether, the various CASPs and players and fintech providers, more importantly, are able to operate together to really grow the industry and provide that next generational solution to the market out there.
Well, I can attest to what you said. I have never really worked directly with Gemini, but we had a talk with the founders back in May 2013, before the exchange was even set up, and I was very impressed by the direction and the compliance-oriented way of Gemini of doing business. So I can attest to that.
And they are resolute about it. There's no two ways.
Well, this brings me to something that I will build upon. Since Gate is also quite a large organization as well, I would like to take your view, because Gate has a bit of a different setup as well than Gemini. about what your experiences are working in Malta and maybe also working outside of Malta.
Well, quite an interesting question. Yes, we're going through quite a lot. Again, we've been in this market for 13 plus years, and we went through the pain and the challenges and the requests that customers were asking to us. Actually, in particular, I come from a classical financial background and understood there as well which were the pain point, which were the points where we could not serve our customers in the best way. And this is what we're doing in Gate at the moment. We're trying to enhance, as all the major players are doing, the customer experience and just bring outside there the main features that customers are asking for us to have. And in particular, and this is a point that I want to emphasize after my colleagues, they spoke here about that. We spoke about traditional banking, we spoke about blockchain. We want to provide them a solution that allowed them to work all the way within the same ecosystem. So you are not going to have a crypto exchange anymore in the near future. You are going to have a crypto exchange that provides you ramp on, ramp off, provides you additional service. So once a customer is brought in with a fairly easy customer onboarding, of course, in the full respect of the law of the local regulation, everyone knows MiCA, PSD2 to come. I think that one is going to be the key challenge, and us at Gate, we're treating this point as a top priority.
So the reason I ask the questions in this order is because first we start with the grassroots. We have two large entities here representing, and lastly but not least, Bob runs Everest, which is licensed in Malta, which is a fairly small organization, obviously, compared to Gemini and Gate. And I want to hear, Bob, your experience, because obviously it's a different perspective for Gemini or Gate with so much resources, so much assets going at it. What's your experience been, especially with the regulation coming in? You mentioned privately earlier the PSD2 directive, which let's say people have mixed thoughts about. And what are your experiences specifically as a small organization that have to comply with ever-changing regulation? And obviously the intertwining of banking now, especially with the PSD2, with crypto exchanges.
It's a really fantastic question. Thank you.
It's a long one as well.
Let me echo what Giovanni was just saying and give you just a market perspective of where, like you were saying, back in 2013, 15, if you looked ahead, it was, we need to combine crypto with payments, with banking, with stocks. And that all leads very quickly to, okay, I need a MiCA license, I need an EMI, I need PSD2, I need MiFID. You have all this different licensing you have to get in order to make all that happen. And what we're seeing is the market bifurcate. There's the super app, big exchanges, the Geminis and Gates of the world. And then there's the guys that can do, for example, better, faster, cheaper, MiCA plus payments. And that'll be part of the ecosystem, as you guys are talking about. So we view ourselves, anyway, as a very viable, very good payment plus crypto. Oh, better, thank you. And actually helping the super apps as they come on board and get 40 million users.
One of the interesting views that I see is, do you see large entities like Gemini or Gate, for example, working more with entities, for example, like XPRIZO, that have been trying to, and successfully now, cracking the code to work in developing nations as well? And the reason why I put it is most large and let's say large entities really that have been operating for a while, they are used to working in a specific way, but smaller organizations have much more knowledge as well with regards to regional needs. So I would probably address you, Richard. What would you see yourself working with large organizations, or do you believe that the way to go is to hold the knowledge and work within those regional institutions? And what benefits could come across by working with large institutions as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always very open to work with everyone, right? I mean, as you know. So usually the main challenge is that when you have a train going, which is a very big train, with its own trends, with its own internal policies and everything, moving that already moving train to a slightly different way of thinking might be challenging. I mean, as you know, we're working with different banks on the ground in different countries. We're working with even crypto exchanges and so on. We managed to penetrate some of them, and we managed to work closely with some of them. So to answer to your question is yes, definitely, we're able to do that. We have the willingness to do that, and there is definitely a very big opportunity where we can plug our knowledge to their huge infrastructure, right? So if there's a big company that wants to expand in these territories, it would potentially cost them even billions to even do half of the work we've done over the years, because the legwork is already done. The failures that we've been through over the years has already been failed, right? I mean, as you know, we tried 1,000 things that didn't work, and then one of the things will work, say, okay, so here, this is what works. And then the other problem is, when you're trying to look at these territories, that even though we might look at continents sometimes as one, they are not one. So if you're looking at Africa, if you look at parts of East Africa, it's completely different from the West. It's completely different from the center. It's completely different from the South or from the North. So then when you're generalizing, say, okay, let's go to Africa, it's a huge mistake. And we've seen this even in other industries, even the gaming industry, right? I mean, which, you know, I have experience there as well for many years. When you're generalizing and not working with the people which actually dirties their hands, then the learning curve will be way longer, let's say.
I would like to pose the next question, because we have spoken privately about it to Bob here on the panel. And we've been mentioning PSD2 directive. So not to be too pedantic, most of us are working all with stable coins, and that would put us under the remit, basically, of, let's say, traditional finance, to keep it very simple, right? So the MFSA have issued the directive saying, hey, if you're going to operate with stable coins, you have to work with an existing EMI or anyone that has the traditional financial regulation on their place. Based on what we spoke a couple of weeks ago, Bob, do you see yourself as a smaller organization working with an existing license holder that has, let's say, for example, an EMI, or going at it yourself and getting also the license? What does make sense? Does it make sense to join forces or to go at it on your own? Because effectively, what the regulator has been saying is you have to work with your competition to use their license, but if you work with your competition, obviously there might be some conflict of interest, right? So I think you might have some interesting views on this.
Let's actually say the dirty thing out loud, too, of what the PSD2 directive is, which is, in order to make a payment, that is, take a stable coin into custody and or transfer it, you need to have a PSD2 license to do that. Well, there are 0 EMIs that actually have that except for stablecoin issuers. So every single EMI out there doesn't have the crypto infrastructure unless they're actually a stablecoin issuer. So there's like 5 in the continent. And so what MFSA sort of said was, you have to give your infrastructure to the EMI and then use your own infrastructure, but under their license. So what we did it 2 layers. We're doing our own for PSD2 because we actually issue redeem digital euros and have secure authentication, all the transaction monitoring. We built all this in-house. So that's really straightforward for PSD2 for us. But we're actually going a step further, and we are partnering with an EMI to actually offer named IBANs and actually do top-up services. So we'll look a little bit more like Skrill or even Revolut here in a couple months. So we'll go PSD2 for ourselves, but then partner with an EMI to actually offer the IBAN itself and the issuing of e-money.
Okay. I'll mention briefly my experience, obviously, because we also run a crypto exchange, and I'll build the next topic, because I have witnessed that we are getting, with this new PSD2 directive, entities or banks that are coming to us to use also our infrastructure. or at the very least, they send us leads. They say, we cannot handle these leads or these prospective clients. Can you handle them on our behalf? So my initial experience, and I will address obviously you, Giovanni, first, is that we, in the initial stages, we've been getting business and leads because more traditional financial institutions want to work with us because obviously we are already regulated within the digital space. But do you believe that the PSD2 directive will help you get business, meaning that if you're going to work with other entities or if going at it also on your own? And I'm focusing on this because the topic is survival of the fittest. So are we going to merge more entities together? Are we going to collaborate more? Are more entities going to die off? We were sitting here, 4 or 5 years ago, and there were hundreds of entities popping up. Now, it's already in the stage of survival of the fittest. I think that only a few people are standing, really, with regards to regulation. So how do you see it going forward to play out, to be able to be compliant? And so the first question, how do you see being able to be compliant? And do you see yourself working more with other entities or more of these entities falling off?
This is, again, another very interesting question. About the compliance, this is the main thing. There is quite a lot of work that we need to do. And when it comes to PSD2, I think there is still something that needs to be done between now and the 1st of March when it's going to become effective. It's a big opportunity, we see that one, because again, it's going to add more credibility to our ecosystem, it's going to attract more third parties. And I see things that in some way we're going to attract partners that are going to come more to our direction instead of being that one the other way around. I think just going back to what we discussed a little bit earlier on with Richard, that say he's got a local expertise in particular in a specific geography. I want to take that one. When we have specific expertise in particular part of the customer journeys, or in particular delivering a particular product, why not? We want to take more from what others are already doing, and we see that one an added value. But again, going back to your second question, we see that there is going to be an added value, and this is a completely shifting paradigm in complete approach. We are now attracting, we are at the center of where all the operations are going to happen.
Obviously, I cannot pass on the comment, obviously, from Gemini, which is one of the big operators. And how do you foresee that the landscape will be consolidating, or maybe the smaller players will be falling off?
It's a loaded. Okay, let me break it down to two parts. I'll start off with my Gemini hat, and then maybe refer to my previous role where I was in traditional banking for 15 years. From a Gemini perspective, we're very fortunate enough to have what I have always referred to as the holy trinity of licenses. We've got our CASP license, our MiFID license, investment services license, as well as our EMI license, PSD license. So we've created an environment for our customers and potentially future customers and partners where there is a seamless ecosystem from when you come in to utilizing the platform to access all the various products, be it fiat, crypto, investment services, derivatives, tokenized stocks, etc., etc., etc. So that has allowed us to seamlessly create a solution, so to speak, to maintain our customer base. But the harsh reality is that each jurisdiction in the world, not only Europe, be it the US, where we are also quite strong, and Asia, they all have their own different ways, their own different methods. If we wanted to tap into Africa, I don't think I'd know where to begin. Because, as Richard mentioned, it's a totally different market. Each part of the world has its own ways of accessing the consumer, attracting the customer. The on-ramp and the off-ramp is ultimately, today, predominantly at the moment, a fiat nature. So that PSD element has to feature. And this is now where I come and will tie in, so to speak, my previous role, where the entity that I worked at was the bank of choice for these said FIs. And there are a number of them. I don't think we realize how many EMIs, or now FIs, and soon to be referred to as PIs, are licensed in Malta. It is a phenomenal amount. And there are some major players, from very small institutions, startups, who are scratching their heads and pulling out the last couple of hairs that remain to try and figure out and navigate the regulation and the directive, to global conglomerates and behemoths that are just hoovering up the competition. So size, a shipping term is size is might. If you're sailing and the tanker is coming your way, you're not going to expect the tanker to change course. If you're a small sailing boat, it's a sailing boat that needs to navigate, because they are more nimble. They're able to do so. They're able to get places that these large tankers cannot. So, and this is probably an idealistic view, but I've always said it, if the industry were to work together, it's not just an ecosystem, but it's a broader solution. It's a global solution where it's not about competition. Competition is healthy because it makes you think differently. Competition makes you innovate. Competition brings about change that is needed. It's the clarity of the regulation that is steering that change, that is driving the innovation. But ultimately, in order to navigate those waters that are not navigable by the larger, broader behemoths and ships that exist, you're going to need the Everest of this world. You're going to need the XPRIZO of this world to tap into Africa. You then have the infrastructure and the size of the larger players, the infrastructural solutions that Gemini provide, that Gate provide, that other players in the world provide. But if we all manage, in an ideal world, to work together, and I think this is where we allow pride to get into the way, where it's, no, I'm this, I'm better than that. If we realize that we need each and every single one of these players to cooperate and work together, we can take the whole industry. We're already up there, we're already at the next level. Think about beyond that, a euphoric stage of access, of a seamless solution, of convenience to the market, a 24/7, painless, efficient ability to transact and settle. That would be the solution.
Because of the time, I had some controversial questions, but unfortunately we have to close it. Couple of remarks. As we mentioned, and everyone can see, especially people who come Sigma year after year or to conferences in general, it's that before we had so many people coming into the digital world, and now it's consolidating, or many people are falling off, as we mentioned, while on the digital banking side, especially with regards to EMIs, they're propping up more than ever. So I think the consolidation is coming towards the digital side of the space. So as concluding remarks, I would like, since everyone obviously represents a different company, to see where you are, where your company might be in the next 3 to 4 years. Maybe start with Giovanni.
Well, in the next 2 or 3 years, 3 years from now, I see that we just built something where customer can have everything that they need to address their financial needs. Crypto, blockchain, and ramp on, ramp off. Everything in one place. You don't need to go anywhere else. This is our objective for the next 2 or 3 years' time.
Bob?
To echo what both Giovanni and Miguel are saying, never ever go in front of a tanker and try to compete with a Gemini, a Coinbase, a Kraken, or a Gate. So we very much are headed towards a B2B2C, providing the infrastructure for payments, crypto, and everything else. And there's a couple of verticals we feel really strongly about where we can actually leverage liquidity from certain players and actually have a really sizable, good business.
Miguel?
It's a hard sell, 2 to 3 years, because from what I've learned in these past 2 to 3 weeks is that it's a very, very, very fast-paced industry. So The super app reference is apt. It's coming. It's there. It exists. But full financial inclusion, I think, is a goal that we should all strive to try and achieve or provide within the next 2 to 3 years. And it's not a dream, it's achievable.
Yeah, from my end, it's very similar to what Giovanni said. We're trying to be the go-to place for a financial app, especially in the emerging markets where we operate, right? So we want our people to come to one single place where they will find their fiat, their crypto, their P2P payments, their exchange. So working together with larger entities than us, we want to bring all this to where it matters in reality.
Thank you, guys. I urge the public to give a big round of applause for this superstar
Thank you
panel.
very much.
Thank you, guys.